of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, 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 not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Hello, Leslie Lee. Welcome to Pod Damn America. Pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I do have to say that this appearance is a part of our ongoing arbitration over the rights to the phrase manette. I know you are obligated to do this, but I'm nevertheless happy to be on.
Of course. Well, I mean, your people will be hearing from my people. I think manette is too good for any of us to really stick our forks in entirely.
Well, we'll let the courts decide.
That's what we have to. There's a little term we have in the stand-up world about that, known as parallel writing. But I feel a little bit like I have some ownership over it, simply because I banged up my professional reputation so much over the topic of Nanette. You know?
Yes. You have suffered more for Nanette than Nanette did, frankly.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait till they see my one-person show about it. Anyways, Leslie Lee, the third of Struggle Session. I'm sure plenty of our listeners will be familiar, but if you're not, Struggle Session is a great leftist sort of pop culture podcast. I'm a big fan of, so I'm glad to finally have one of y'all on.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be on, especially since have had you on, Jake, and Alex. We've had Alex on twice, actually, and he never invited us on Pod Dem America for some reason. And I'm not saying I'm hurt by it, but, you know, it's a little funny. It's a little funny. What's the deal, Alex? I do want to say that when we had him on our show, we made him watch Berserk, which is this really fucked up anime, and it scarred him for life, I think. So I think he may have a little bit of resentment from that, but that's the life of podcasting.
Well,
okay?
It's entirely possible. Alex Patak, it does seem slightly unhinged at times.
And that's our fault.
He watches a lot of anime, and sometimes I wonder if he's seen just too much. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But yeah, glad to have you on the show. I must say, I listened to an episode recently, and this happens to me quite a bit, because I guess I'm just in the podcast world a lot. But I was just, pining away the hours, minding my own business, listening to a podcast at work, and then suddenly heard you guys talk about my show and how I guess we're getting similar ratings. But that's cool. That's good news.
No. To be clear, you are getting bigger ratings than us, and it's starting to, it's a problem, okay? Because I feel like we've had you on our show. Yeah, the whole, DEA kicking down your door thing, that probably helped, but I think our show could take a little bit of credit for it. And now your numbers are outdoing our numbers, and it's a joke, but it is kind of like the ridiculousness of podcasting, because we're constantly looking at these numbers, or if we're on Twitter, if we're on SoundCloud, like I have a job besides this where I have to meet numbers constantly, and it drives me fucking insane. And then I come on and I have to do the same goddamn thing. And this is one of my primary examples of hell world. It's like at no point in my life do I stop being graded on something. And then I'm in competition with other people I like Pod Damn America got 8,000 views and we only got 6,000. What the fuck? So what do we got to do? And it's like, it's constant and it sucks.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, I'm feeling it right now. I'm like, I'm in this weird crisis with this show right now, where it's like, oh, I think I did it. Like, I made a thing that I can probably get pretty close to centering my career around. And you know what happens when that happens, Leslie? Complete fucking misery.
Yes.
But anyway, I guess if I was to be a plain old normie liberal about it, I'd say, you know what, Leslie? Good morning. Let's get this bread.
There's nothing. The last thing I want to do in the morning is get bread. Who fucking eats bread in the morning?
I know.
It's fucking
Losers.
carbs.
Anyway, let's talk about this this blue wave that we just experienced this week. Go ahead.
The blue wave. I didn't experience a wave. I think I said this on Jack AM's stream. It was more like the blue last 3 drops that end up in your underwear when you're at the urinal. Yeah. That was more what it was like.
Yeah, it was a confusing feeling watching these results come in. It didn't feel like maybe entirely one way or the other. I've never been part of a crowd at a bar that just dissipated in emotion so quickly. Like it felt like watching one of those Super Bowls where, you know, it just doesn't really function like a Super Bowl, or somebody just gets crushed in like the first whatever, you know. I think my main takeaway so far in terms of you know, obviously something that we have to analyze here on both of our shows, being the you know, just the atrocious hashtag resistance response to literally anything. Is I mean the first thing that jumped out to me that's probably kind of a bummer and a bad sign is just the insistence now that Beto O'Rourke should be the 2020 candidate.
Oh yeah,
because he lost.
Yeah,
I don't think that's how that
so
works.
Funny. It's so well. This is how Democrat brains work. Like losing means you're winning. That's why Hillary Clinton is still around. While on the Republican side, and people were talking about this, like have been talking about this for years and years and years. That, you know, when you lose a presidential election as a Republican, like they just fucking bury you. They bury you with your entire staff, and then you're basically never heard from again. But Democrats keep letting people have second bites at the apple, and like the fact that Beto O'Rourke, now he did overperform, but at the end of the day, it's like what I think is really indicative of is like he's a, you know, charismatic guy, handsome, you know, pretty decent politics, and he's a white male, and like they don't have, like, usually the Democrats are supposed to have like 10 of those people. They don't have any of those people. And young too. It's like, so they're so desperate for something, and we're only 2 years away. We're not 2 years away. We're like 6 months away from the start of the next presidential election, and they don't really have anything to hang their hat on. None of the, like, you know, like Cory Booker or Kamala Harris, they're like black, you know, they don't want to support them, and really, unless it's like, you know, that's their second choice. If they don't have any handsome white men to run for them to defeat Trump, and like they're just grabbing onto whatever they can, including someone who lost his election.
Yeah, I do like how the presidential race now it's like on the same time track as like Christmas, where it just like keeps getting closer and closer to right after Halloween, which I guess the midterms is Halloween in the scenario. But Beto also, I mean, you're right. If he was a Republican, they would have like kicked him into that hole from 300 and never heard from him again, you know. But there's this strange redemption story sort of already in the works about him. Yeah, I know. It's really funny because you think that the left is mired in all these identity politics, and they're going to sort of use that around someone like a Cory Booker or Kamala Harris. But at the end of the day, I think that some of them are like, some people on the left or the, you know, the center or whatever are so they're like meta racist, where they're like, no, we have to run Beto because other people are racist and they only want to vote for a white guy.
Yeah, they think they pushed too far with Obama, who, you know, if he ran again would win by like triple digits somehow, right? But they think that they push too far with Obama being half black, and so they need to correct course. And Hillary Clinton wasn't enough, so they need to go with a safe white man because America is just too damn racist. And that's been like the basis for all these stories that have happened since Trump won, where every single fucking week there's a new story like, see, this is the proof Trump won because Trump voters are racist. I'm like, you've been saying for years that all white people are racist. All white people are racist. So, of course, Trump voters are racist, too. And all those same studies and polls do show that, like, 60% of Clinton voters think black people are lazy, you know, stuff like that. White Clinton voters think black people are lazy. Like racism is there. But the fact is, Obama was able to defeat it because he ran a good campaign. He was able to win over racist Democrats or, you know, swing voters, I guess, with his campaign, with his message. And that should be more the focus instead of trying to so they're not committed to like ending racism in any serious way because you have to end capitalism for that. So their plan is just to like kowtow a little bit to racist by like nominating a white man, which still has progressive values. That's the compromise they're willing to make. But but it's not like Cory Booker is like a better option or anything. Like I don't think he's a pretty like, you know, facile guy, like not very charismatic, not very good politician in my opinion. So like the Democrats really have nothing except Beto, who was in a band with one of the guys from Mars Volta, and that alone would get him my vote normally.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that is pretty cool. I'm a Texas boy, so you know, even.
Oh yeah, what part?
I grew up in Houston, which actually had some pretty cool results this week during the midterms. You know, like I said, it's this huge mixed bag or whatever. But as I've been sifting through the stories of everything that happened during the quote-unquote blue wave, like there's like obviously this dead pimp in Nevada. That's pretty funny. For anyone that's listening that didn't hear this story, a Republican won an assembly seat, you know, some small race or whatever, but he literally died like months ago. and on top of that, he's a pimp. So, I mean, I think he should be the Democratic frontrunner for 2020 personally. He at least won. But another thing that happened is somewhere around the number of like 49 judge seats got flipped in Houston. I think like all of them in Harris County, and they all went to black women. And there's also this DSA endorsed judge that won. And a judge on his way out was so mad about the results of these judge seats that he went on record, and I gotta pull up his quote. Let's see if I can find it. But basically, his quote was something along the lines of like he had all these people that he let go. He released a bunch of people from his jails and said like, you know what, you know, his sentiment was essentially like, you know, these are criminals. Like, you know, I'm going to get you. I'm going to release them. And it's like everyone wanted them released. They were nonviolent people.
Sweet, dude. Awesome.
It reminded me of a couple years ago in New York when the NYPD sort of tried to pull this move where they went on strike and everyone was like, good. Like, we don't want you on the streets.
They did like that little like slow down, and everybody was like, nobody noticed except like less of their friends were going to jail. It's like, yeah, that's a good thing. You aren't necessary. Thank you.
Yeah. And the sentiment just being like, you know, that we'll be so sorry and we'll come crawling back and beg like, please, police, come abuse us in the streets and beat the shit out of us again, you know?
That's what happens when you believe your own PR. When you're a cop and you go home and watch the Law and Order marathon, like that's not who you are, man. Like, people don't need you or want you. But like I think what you're getting at is like when you do dig deep down, there are some cool things that happen for Democrats, and I think I had a like more impact than some of these big races people were looking at. I think that it's the loss of the big races like Gillum, possibly losing, Abrams possibly losing, Beto losing. Like, these were all the races that, got all the national attention. These were the names that everybody knew. But then when you look deeper, it's like, for example, in my town, Barbara Comstock lost, which I was very surprised by, and like that's a good thing. A lot of house like state houses flipped, state senates flipped. Like, when you look down, like, and I think some of that stuff has more effect on people's lives than some of these, big Senate races. I like, if Beto had won, that wouldn't have changed the makeup of the Senate or anything.
Yeah.
It would still be the same Senate, but there was so much money and focus and energy put into these handful of races when you can win from like the bottom up too.
Yeah, for sure. I just pulled up a story about this judge. Okay, so after losing re-election, Texas judge releases several juvenile defendants after asking one question. Here's the question he asked. The juveniles were asked whether they were going to, if released, kill somebody. And someone in the room, a public defender, was quoted as saying, "I am baffled by why he did it." So complete fucking insanity. But anyway,
so he let out children. He let children out of prison as his fuck you.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how that's how backwards this guy was, is that he thought that was a fuck you. Anyway, I gotta feel a little bit of love for my home county down there. But yeah, like I said, I am a Texas boy. I grew up in Houston, and grew up listening to the Drive-In and the Mars Volta and all that shit. So, and also having sort of kept in touch with a lot of my old friends from back there, during this Beto thing, man, it was really hard to I don't know, to get emotionally involved with it at all, because Texas is this white whale for Democrats, and I think the smarter of us knew not to get our hopes up, because the thing is, voter suppressed and gerrymandered to shit, but also there's a there's a genuine wall of people that I think you can't beat down there. I've been thinking a lot about AMLO, the guy who won in Mexico, and how he probably actually won the last couple of elections he competed in, but the corruption. I mean, they were able to edge him out just by tweaking the numbers or whatever, and then he actually won this time by getting so many more votes that it would be impossible on a world stage to to fudge the numbers and go, this guy didn't win. And I think that's the sort of thing that you need in Texas. And I've just been thinking about how I watched the debates between Beto and Cruz, and the whole time Beto's on this amazing campaign, and it's getting all this attention, and he's doing kickflips in Whataburger parking lots and stuff, and all these, there's just like a mural of him in Austin with like a Superman shirt on, and also a funny story about that mural. Someone defaced it and wrote that he was like a war hawk or something. Some leftist.
Imperialist.
Yeah, they wrote that he was an imperialist, and everyone in town that doesn't understand fucking any of this was like, some Republican defaced this mural because there's only two sides of. There's only Republicans and Democrats, right? And understand that it's some crazy leftist or whatever down there. But I was watching the debates, and he was getting these applause breaks, and he was getting all this coverage, and you were seeing clips of him, in your Facebook feed or in the news or whatever, of him owning Cruz in all these ways or whatever. But if you paid attention with a trained ear to Republican politics, Cruz doesn't. It's almost a testament to how much people believe in that capitalist shit down there, that he can be so fucking unlikable and still get them by just really saying this basic free market capitalist shit. All he had to do was trot out a few lines about the market and rattle off some statistics that probably weren't even true about whatever, Obamacare or some bullshit like that. And, there's a huge silent majority down there of just like old fucks that are relentlessly capitalistic. And I was thinking about it a lot because I had like history teachers growing up, where I learned all this bullshit where, they still think that like, how do I phrase this? Okay. So in Texas specifically, politics are not really thought of in terms of a spectrum between capitalistic and anti-capitalistic. It's more individualist and not individualist, right? So
yeah,
the fear is at once of both communists and socialists and Nazis. All of these things are the opposite of what Texans think of themselves as believing in, right? So, I mean, you're literally hearing people say like, Nazis, that's National Socialism, etc. You would hear people talk about the specter of communism. You would hear all these rants from these old fucking cow people about how like the threat of leftist politics is a threat to your individuality and
yes.
your agency as an individual or whatever. And I think that my personal takeaway from Beto is that because he didn't engage that in a meaningful way, and he tried to do the third way thing where he skated around it and sort of, tried to get those people's votes too. You're just never going to win Texas that way. You're never going to flip it unless there's like a national conversation about what these values actually mean and how, that's not really a good way of looking at capitalism and its role in your life, I guess. So I think it's kind of a fool's errand. I don't know.
Yeah. Like so I'm from Louisiana, so I think we have the same kind of politics down there. If you look at the results there, it's just like all red except the one district that they like reverse gerrymandered into being allowing like Democrats to win. Because once you can only gerrymander so many places. You gotta have like one block that has like enough voters that you can have a Democrat win, and that's New Orleans, of course, and that's New Orleans and parts of Baton Rouge. Like it's so fucked up. Like it's just like it's like a crescent moon shape, like screeching through like the bottom half of the state, and that's the one district that encompasses the two cities with the most black people in it, and that's how the Democrats were able to win one House seat, just one in the whole state. But yeah, like so you have to. I was talking about the narrative of the Democrats and how they really didn't have one. They didn't say what they were going to do for people, basically. And like so when the Republicans talk, they say, all right, we're going to, let you do what you want. We're not going to have the government get in your way. We're not going to overtax you. And then you can do for yourself what you want, right? You're going to, go out there and, play the capitalistic lottery. They don't phrase it like that, but that's basically what that is. You're going to have an opportunity at the American dream. And that's what we're going to do for you. We're going to give you an opportunity without getting you in the way. And all the Republicans are on the same page about this. They're very clear about this. They're explicit about this. Everybody knows what the Republicans stand for. With the Democrats, they never make like that, the more collectivist like counter arguments like, hey, if we all work together, we can all take care of each other. Like they never, the Democrats never expressed it, and they certainly never expressed it like on a wide scale when all the party is on like one page with this. Like they try to cater to like they don't have one singular message that's clear whatsoever, aside from we're not Trump, we're not the Republicans are bad. And that's not enough to get the non-voters out there to vote for you. That's really where the Democrats are losing. I think if they actually had a message that would convince people that politics actually matter to them and can affect their lives and improve their lives, like things would be different. But at the end of the day, the Democrats don't want to put out that message because they don't like really believe it either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, that I guess like what I've been trying to kind of wrap my head around is that like, it would have been cool if Beto had sort of been able to snatch this away from Ted Cruz, but I don't think it's really going to happen until, like, I don't think it's going to happen in that order. I don't think someone's going to beat someone like Ted Cruz and then change politics from there. I think we're going to have to change a lot of, just things that people believe in before they come around and then even vote for someone, even just who's a Democrat. Like, I don't even know that I'm saying that like a Bernie would win down there. I mean, because like the funny thing about Texas is that there's a fucking billboard on the drive between Houston and Dallas that's just got a picture of Obama with a Hitler mustache, and it just says socialist. These people think, any Democrat is a socialist. They don't understand the subtle nuance between, neoliberal and leftist and all this stuff. So, I don't know. I think you need to, like you're saying, you need a movement that's going to inspire non-voters. And in order to do that, you have to get the cobwebs out of these people's heads about, because like this individualist shit is normal down there. Even non-voters are just like, that's the zero line where they start. So when you try to start selling someone on, why they should join the DSA or something like that, those are the questions they always bring up. That's what's like the norm, I guess. So I don't know. I listened to I'll plug your podcast again, the struggle session you guys did on Fight Club, and I actually found it really interesting because, since that movie, there really hasn't been like a proper like anti-capitalist big piece of cultural propaganda.
And the sad part is that no one picked up on it, and that movie has now just been maligned as like toxic masculinity or toxic masculinity run amok. Like that's not the film. That's not what the writer had in mind. I don't know. I haven't read a lot about what Fincher said about it, but wherever he said about it, when you look at the film, it's really about like all these people are dissatisfied with capitalism. It's failed them. It's made their lives miserable. They're not mad at women in the film. They specifically talk about that. They're mad at their fathers. They're mad at the system, and they get together. They work together to take it down and blow up the banks. Like that is a good leftist parable that more people that we really should have been using, the left at the time should have been using to recruit. Unfortunately, it came out like 10 years too early. It came out before, the stock market crash, where the anti-capitalist sentiment, or at least the anti-bank sentiment was, more rampant and prevalent in popular culture. So people didn't really understand it, and liberalism really can't deal with a movie like Fight Club because it's not a liberal film. When you really look at the message, it's more of like it's much more radical than that. It's like it's anarchist in a lot of ways. That's why actually the alt-right does not like the film, because because Project Mayhem, they're anarchists. They want to take down the system. They think Western civilization fucking sucks. They want to destroy it. They want to take down everything, where of course the alt-right, they're traditionalists. They want to preserve white culture and Western civilization. When the characters in the movie completely and utterly condemn that at every opportunity.
Yeah, I think it was a fantastically sort of misread thing, or at least it has been in retrospect, because it got associated with a lot of the politics that actually are completely anti-it. But I guess I've just been thinking about that a lot, because I think you and I are both probably like culture guys on some level. We're both people that consume a lot of it and understand it, and I guess I'm just saying we're nerds or whatever. But
yeah,
but having just come out the other end of an electoral cycle, this is when I always think about this stuff, because the fucking week before these races are concluded, that's I think when you should shut up and just be like, hey, Beto's great, but afterwards, when we talk about doing the long-term work, this is when we should be like, someone should be writing the next fucking Fight Club.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie did, I do remember, like, some people I know saying, oh, I ran out of the movie theater and was like, let's go fucking overthrow everything. It's just that back then that was a lot more, like, fringe, and it wouldn't even be you wouldn't be able to explain why it inspired you to the most of society, but I think we're getting closer. But anyway, hopefully some of the work can be done soon. But let's talk about some other things that happened this week. Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson. So this is another reason I wanted to come on the show, because I know you have some connections with Antifa. At least that's what I've heard. And
I have a black telephone that rings sometimes in my apartment. I answer it and do bad things for them.
So so as a member of the media, I do host a podcast called Struggle Session. We'll be having our first live show November 19th in Los Angeles. Please come out.
Plug.
You can get all the information on strugglesession.us. But as a member of the media, I was deeply, deeply troubled and deeply disturbed by what your associates and Antifa did to Tucker Carlson. I heard that they banged down his door. They kicked it down. They made him go into his closet, put on his old bow ties, and spun them around like in the Looney Tunes cartoon. And they did this in front of his wife. Deeply embarrassing to him and his family. I just want to know, like, why? How did we get to this point where even a white nationalist does not feel safe at home? I'm distraught.
Well, I spoke with my cadre of shadowy associates before the operation went down, and just to clear the air, the reason that they did that is because we were all out of chocolate milkshakes to throw at him. So, it's just more a question of materialism.
Oh God! Like the way, like, Stephen Colbert, like, fuck Stephen Colbert, like, straight up, like, his rabid defense of this complete cretin and piece of shit. I'm gonna give you some exclusive hot takes. So I've already said, Tucker Carlson should be treated the exact way that he wants ICE to treat refugees. Okay, that's first of all, because these are extremely vulnerable people who he goes on every night and demonizes. And I didn't even say like illegal immigrants, because he's shitty to them too, and he should be treated that way too. But we're literally talking, when we're talking about the caravan, we're literally talking about refugees from the wars that we ginned up. Okay, this is our responsibility, and he's going on there and demonized them and suggesting that some of them might be terrorists and all this other garbage. Like, he's a complete piece of shit. I do not think that he has a right to feel safe in his home. He has no more right to feel safe in his home than anybody else. And most people don't feel, not most people, maybe a lot of people don't feel safe in your home. Poor people don't feel safe in your home. I grew up poor in a poor neighborhood. I did not feel safe in my home. So I don't know why this motherfucker deserves the right to feel safe in their home, or where these people who say everyone should feel safe in their home. What the fuck are you talking about? Okay, Stephen Colbert, if everybody should feel safe in their home, why don't you sell a couple of your homes and put some of the homeless in them? Okay, get rid of your give away most of your wealth until all you have is your home safety, and give it to other people if that's what you really think. But you don't really fucking think that. You would have different politics if you actually believe that everyone should feel safe in their home.
That's a really good point, because like, if you really don't believe in like a collective way of us taking care of each other, then you'd have absolutely no right to be begging us for you to feel safe in your home, motherfucker. You should be like sleeping next to a shotgun like you fucking talk about all the time, if you
I really like, I can't believe like there hasn't been a few conservatives that have just come out and said Tucker Carlson is a weak little baby for not being able to take care of his family, because this is all this shit they talk all the time. This is what they're supposedly preparing for. And then when Antifa shows up at your door, all you do is cry about it. Fuck you, Tucker.
Yeah. Fuck you, Tucker. I was in my head for the last 2 minutes trying to come up with a bit about Chris Tucker Carlson, but I don't think it's going to come to fruition. He's like, it's a...
Never kick down a black man's door.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, and the way people are circling the media and liberal media, circling the wagons around. Now, I do have to say there are some leftists who I respect who are like a little bit iffy on it. only because they think it might be ineffective or it might backfire in a certain way. I think reasonable leftists could agree or disagree on that, but I don't have any time for any arguments about the morality of it, because this is what he deserves. And I don't have any, this is the exclusive hot take, I don't have any I don't think that his family doesn't deserve it. we don't think the families of drug dealers deserve to not have their doors kicked down by police. Like, I don't feel sorry for, no one feels sorry for mob wives. It's the same fucking thing. Nazi wives, mob wives, same fucking thing.
That was an exclusive hot take you could only hear
Exclusive,
on Pod Damn America. But I honestly do agree, because the way that these people have sort of felt comfortable dehumanizing the people in the quote unquote migrant caravan, the reason that these people are fleeing, as you said, a situation caused by our own imperialist government, but the direct reason is it's to protect their own children. So, yes. Are your kids better than these other kids? I mean, what the fuck's going on there? That reminds me a little bit also of this whole thing I was just thinking about with Texas, because the border is obviously this huge topic down there, this huge political issue that people have different ways of explaining. And just to get back to that individualist, free market libertarian bullshit. And if you really sit down and talk with someone, if you really sit down and ask them questions like, why is fucking Tucker Carlson, a person who should be allowed to feel safe when all these other people aren't? One of the things they'll tell you is that, I think that a lot of people have they have this idea of like statism, and I think it's rooted in this sort of libertarian free market belief that, that capitalism will correct all of these social woes, right? And so that people are playing against that just golden, amazing thing about capitalism by doing things like leaving their own country and, coming here or whatever. But that belief only really makes sense if you really believe in that Chicago school of golden economics, and that, like, someone leaving a situation caused by our own government in Honduras, like, morally should stay there and then, like, start a business in Honduras or some shit, and then somehow, all these other countries are sort of just going to compete with each other until we're all, like, this even. It's nonsense. It's interesting to me because it's in order to believe that, you have to really actively be like keeping historical context out of everything. And it's really interesting that the people that are in charge of so much political shit in this country are, I guess, actively trying to keep historical context out of any argument. Oh, shit, hold on. That is my alarm clock, because I am a very tired person. Okay, I think I got it. But anyways, I don't know. I'm just going to be kind of thinking about Texas for a long time. I don't know if there's going to be anything that entertaining to come out of it. But another thing that happened this week is... I fucking forgot about this already. Our boy Jeff Sessions got fired.
God.
Yeah.
Our boy Jeffrey Beauregard. I want to be. I'm not the first, unfortunately, to say welcome to the resistance. Jesus Christ.
But he really has been welcome to the resistance.
Yes. I read a tweet that was so terrible. It was like, yes, even though Jeff Sessions is a white supremacist fascist, his firing could still be a bad thing. How, Sway? How can his firing be a bad thing? Or at least, how can it be a thing worth, like, protesting in the streets over? My God, there's so many levels that I'm offended by this on. I'm going to talk, let me talk just as, like, on the black level, like, motherfuckers, how can you, like, he's a racist piece of shit. That if he was born 115 years earlier, he would have the biggest goddamn plantation in all the South. You know that's who this person is, and you're still, but because he annoyed Trump mildly and got fired, that means that, well, he's kind of on our side now, and we need to defend him or something like that. It's like, no, and I'm not saying that him getting fired is necessarily a good thing or will benefit black people, but him getting fired is not going to harm black people, most likely. Like, he's the worst of the worst. This is what we all said when he was hired. Like, this is the worst case scenario when you're talking about things like voter rights or, prison reform. Like, he's the worst person you could possibly hire, and they did. Like, he's like an electable David Duke, and he got the position. Now he's gone, and maybe he's not going to be replaced by anybody good, but, like, you know what? Fuck Jeff Sessions. Like, fuck him.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's already been, like, a GoFundMe put up for him, and it just shows you, like, how short-sighted people can be and how we're really kind of trapped in this ideology of, like, not more than two things can be bad at the same time. Because,
like, I don't even want to call it ideology. It's more like a narrative. It's like a TV show. Like, like all these, like Game of Thrones, right? Like, characters will switch sides, or like pro wrestling, right? Where you go from heel to babyface depending on certain things action. And that's what this is. It's like just one long ongoing anime for these people. And now Tucker Carlson has joined Goku's side.
Yeah,
now.
He's Vegeta.
Yes.
He's good sometimes. And Jeff Sessions is obviously one of the androids from when they get back to Earth, the weird white-haired, crazy-looking one. Yeah, so I think the reason that people got on that kick is because the immediate story, or at least the spin that was put on it, and its immediate aftermath, is that Trump's going to replace him with someone who will have some sort of capacity to attack the Mueller probe. And this guy Whitaker obviously sucks. He's pretty terrible at, but as we discussed, two things can be bad at the same time or whatever. But it always comes back with these people to, yeah, you're right, their weird kayfabe ongoing meta drama thing, which is Mueller and the Russia investigation. I think that in our notes here, you referred to Mueller as liberal QAnon.
Yes, it's the thing they're pinning all their hopes on, because the QAnon for the conservatives, how it functions is basically, we don't have to get into the details of it, but it's basically pinning all the hopes that Trump is not completely deranged, right? Like, if QAnon is true, then everything Trump does, no matter how nonsensical, makes sense on the whole, right? And so with Mueller, no matter how much the Democrats fuck up or just do nothing or roll over or lay down, Mueller is still in their back pocket, and he's going to show up and save the day. It's just that last, like, hope spot is what you call in wrestling. Like, that's just like, he's the guy on the apron with his hand out, holding the tag rope with his hand out, waiting for Nancy Pelosi to just tag him in, and then he's going to come in, run roughshod on all the heels, toss him out, win the match. That's what Mueller is, and it's the same function as Q, basically, because, like, having all these people, like, so excited and so intensely focused on, like, a former FBI agent hired by George W. Bush. You can't explain that with politics or ideology. That's something larger. It's story. It's narrative. It's pro wrestling. It's kayfabe. It's culture. It's something that hits people in their hearts, not just their brains. This is not strategy. This does not make sense. This is a story, and this is something that people want to believe in, and that's why they're all coming out and protesting to protect Mueller, who's, again, a complete piece of shit, who defended torture, helped, orchestrate the war on terror, responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths, partially, and it's just, should be buried under the Hague. but this is what the Democrats have built their identities around post-election, like immediately after the election.
Man, if I had known that wrestling terminology was going to be this important to the politics of the end of the world, I would have paid way more attention when I was a child.
I know, right?
I was actually never really into wrestling as a kid, and now I'm having to go back and relearn, or learn for the first time what kayfabe is, because it's literally being used in describing what's going on with Donald Trump.
Yeah. There's no way not to talk about it, unfortunately. But there was an article, I think, maybe New York Times tried to explain this in wrestling terms, but their dipshit liberal idea of kayfabe was it's only what Donald Trump is doing. It's only what the Republicans are doing. They're doing kayfabe, which is lying to American people when the other thing is true. No, that's not what kayfabe is. Kayfabe doesn't just mean the bad guys are pretending to be bad or lying to the people, but the good guys are really participating in legitimate fights. That's not how it works. It's everybody. It's the bad guys. It's the good guys. It's the promoters. It's the broadcast journalists, the media, the commentators. They're all involved in kayfabe and putting on this show for people that is hiding what's really going on. So the New York Times is a part of the kayfabe too, a massive part of it. And really, you cannot understand American politics without understanding how professional wrestling works. I never thought I'd see the day where I could say that and that wouldn't be completely cheesy and reductive.
Yeah, no,
but at this
true.
point, it's just true.
Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah, but I think you're absolutely right about Mueller and QAnon, because they're both these ongoing mythologies that are, sellable because, there's an emotional demand for it from either side. QAnon being, people that are clinging to the idea that their guy Trump is actually somehow still in power or not, or competent rather, and is some sort of mastermind. And then with Mueller, it's it's all hinged on the Russia thing. Is if we can prove that Russia actually caused this election, then we don't have to address any of the the actual reasons why Hillary lost or why America isn't perfect. That seems to be the emotional motivation for the Russia thing, because if you can really put your head down and go to sleep at night as a white person, if you're oh, it was obviously this massive conspiracy, otherwise everything was going great and everything would have been good enough or whatever.
Which is so funny to believe, because if that were true, then how come the Democrats didn't win Congress or Senate at the same time? If the Russians just stole this from Hillary, how come they didn't win anything else?
Yeah, well, so that's the funny thing about this weird mixed bag that we got this last week, is that people are already starting to say the Kremlin had their hand in the McCaskill race and all this stuff, but it's okay, but they just picked a bunch of specific races and then it only applies to the ones that Democrats lost, or how the fuck does that work, right? And I think that we have maybe a tendency sometimes as leftists to maybe overcorrect a little bit, because this is such an obnoxious argument that comes from liberals. The every source of all of my problems is Russian bots sort of argument. But I think the reality, you could make an argument that there's some influence going on. There's all sorts of influence going on in every direction in all different elections in all different countries or whatever, and maybe not be too prudent to completely dismiss Russia's motivations, but I think their role, the problem is this emotional thing we're describing, this tendency to hinge all of it on once we solve this problem, it'll all go away, because even if you could prove some level of involvement in American politics by some sort of Russian misinformation campaign, that doesn't make racism go away, which is another huge motivating factor in any of these fucking horrible races. Like, so much of this shit's homegrown.
It's homegrown. Racism is a factor. Sexism is a factor. Poor campaigning is a factor. The Democrats not being an actual political party with any kind of platform or message, and instead just being like a big, welfare scheme for graduates from Ivy League colleges. Like, that's where all the Democrats' money goes to. Like, these fucking failed sons who become campaign managers who know nothing about campaigning and just like try to tell the Democrats that all they need is an app. They don't need posters. They don't need signs. They don't need volunteers. This is stuff that literally happened with Hillary Clinton's campaign. That was not the responsibility of the Russians, as far as I know. Like, there's so many factors. Like, people have a real problem, and like 2 years on, with always trying to pin it on just one thing to the exclusion of everything else that's the cause for it. Like, there are a lot of things went into Hillary Clinton's loss, and if you can prove that Russia was responsible at best for 1% of it, that doesn't do away with the other 99%. But people think it does. Like, when you point out that she didn't go to Wisconsin, they'll counter you with, well, there was a Facebook ad by a Russian agency that said black people shouldn't support Hillary Clinton. Like, those two things don't even out. Those two things can both be true, but one of them can be completely irrelevant to the other. Like, you have to, people have a real hard time holding two ideas in their head at the same time.
Yeah.
Anything that requires that is almost impossible to explain. People just want one simple explanation for why, and the explanation that makes them feel the best will be the one that they go with for all eternity, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely, because if the Russia thing is real, then that means that you're not racist and that you're not sexist and that you're not complicit. And I think that's like the most important, that's the thing that's most for sale in our society right now, is like, you're off the hook, you're not fucking complicit, which is like a weird reflection of why wokeness is sort of for sale, etc. I mean, it's all fucking tied together. I just think about this stuff a lot because I think it's bigger picture stuff that we need to understand going forward, as a fucking a nerdy English major type stand-up comedian person who has to read the room. I'm constantly trying to understand people and their motivations, and that seems to be what's going on with all that, with this deranged Russiagate bullshit. And then also there's all this shit that people believe back in Texas, and both of these things, are huge stumbling blocks to any good being actually done in this country. I mean, we're really going to have to do something that that activates people and stimulates them and keeps them from using these excuses, essentially, is what they are. I don't know how to do that, and I'm not going to ask you to to solve all of America's problems. But I guess before I get out of here, before I get off the phone with you, in these trying times, as a a person who consumes a lot of media, what would you recommend for me and my audience right now if we're looking for some sort of movies or literature or comics or anime or whatever to consume? Do you have anything that would brighten up the specter of all this horrible oncoming bullshit? What are you reading? What are you watching these days?
Well, here's the thing. For me, I tend to dive darker to feel better.
I like it.
So right now I'm reading a lot of Cormac McCarthy. I'm going between No Country for Old Men and rereading Blood Meridian.
Okay.
Both very dark books.
Oh yeah.
And Cormac McCarthy is a conservative. He does have he is very conservative. Yeah. He does believe in good versus evil. But the cool thing is he always writes about the evil people. So that kind of balances out his like bullshit preaching that, you know, his focus is usually on characters who are deeply flawed and deeply bad. So he never can really, there's not enough time to lecture you because he's too busy depicting depravity to do it. I actually found something really interesting in No Country for Old Men. There's a Ricky Ray Rector reference in one of the passages. Like, yeah, like he the Sheriff Bell, who played by Tommy Lee Jones in the movie, he's talking about like how his experience with the death penalty, and he's actually says he's against it, and he says he talks about how one time a lot of those boys who are put to death, they're not too bright is what he phrases it. And he says he had one instance where a guy went he asked for his last meal, he had pecan pie for dessert, and he ate it and then left the rest, and then the guard said, "Are you going to finish that?" And he said, "No, I'm going to have it later. I'm saving it for later," which is exactly what Ricky Ray Rector did. So
yeah,
I just want to say to the Clintons, you're such pieces of shit that even Cormac McCarthy, arch conservative writer, was disgusted by you. Like the guy who wrote Blood Meridian, which is just about brutality and violence and murder and people hacking each other to death, still finds you completely and utterly deplorable. So shout out to the Clintons for that. But yeah, I've been reading a lot of Cormac McCarthy. I just rewatched Sorry to Bother You, which is even better on the second go if you haven't seen it yet. I've definitely caught that Blu-ray.
I've been meaning to rewatch it because I've only seen it the one time, and yeah,
it's better the second time.
Yeah, I was imagining there'd probably be a bunch of stuff I'd catch and stuff the next time through. So I'll probably check that out soon.
The first Purge, probably it might be even more leftist than Sorry to Bother You. Actually, low key,
Really?
like people didn't forget. It's blacker and more leftist than Sorry to Bother You. But their advertising was just like how Make America Purge Again hat. Like I love that they were able to trick like a lot of white people into seeing a movie with almost nothing but black characters.
That's what the fuck I'm talking about. That's how we fix this shit. That's how we flip Texas the next time around, or do the groundwork that gets people to understand what the fuck they're talking about in these upcoming elections and shit like that. Is like, yeah, make a fucking leftist movie and then make the advertisement for it some shit that would get right-wing people and everyone else and gray people in the door, and then when they'll walk out of there, they won't even understand that they're thinking about leftism. They'll just be like, "Oh shit, it's fucked up that that we get pitted against each other in all these ways," right? Like that's how you fucking do it. I think from the cultural level, propaganda wise, for good. I don't know.
You're right, because like there's so much like woke stuff that is explicitly woke and then doesn't really have that many bad politics, but still has the result of like turning people off and turning people against, like like having the reactionaries like get super mad at it, and it becomes this big culture war thing where people have already entrenched sides, where the stealthy approach, I think it has a lot of value to it too when it comes to the Trojan horse purge approach. Like that has a lot of value too, I think. Like I know you shouldn't necessarily hide the politics of everything, but even with Sorry to Bother You, like he says, like Boots has been very clear about this, like this is a film for everybody. This is not just a black film. This is a film that anybody can enjoy just because it's a well-made, funny film that happens to have good politics too. You never, whenever we're talking about culture, you never want to make a message movie. You just want to have themes and ideas that you talk about, but you never just want to make a PSA. Like that's the key to making any kind of enduring art with a political message that is worthless shit, basically. Like it has to be aesthetics first. I would say themes before message, and aesthetics above all, because if it's not well made, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And it's like, you can tell when something's like really heavy handed and kind of corny, and it's just like, it's a political message jammed into the framework of a story or something like that. Stories are, they're about truth, and the truth is going to be more abstract than something that is relevant to specific political issues. So you shouldn't underestimate your audience. Like you should make something like Sorry to Bother You that's big and leaves the audience, if you're like me, leaving the the theater and, being inspired, or like even to go as far back as to, this Fight Club thing that you talked about on your show and that we were just talking about, like, I think that if you can write something that is that level of stimulating and inspiring, you can have that moment for people when they leave the theater and they're fired up about something and they don't even understand why, and then later on in their life when it comes to understanding a more specific sterile political issue, that thing is just going to sort of echo and ring in the back of their head.
Yeah,
they're going to have like somewhat of a foundation for, okay, these two things are similar, and that's like what I think that's what the role of culture could be in this, and I guess, what I'm trying to describe is sort of like a big abstract dialectic or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I agree. Like, so at Struggle Session, we kind of approach it from both aspects. Like, so we try to, talk about, leftist media, but we also talk about media from a leftist perspective. Like, you can do both, right? Like, you can even like I was just saying about Cormac McCarthy, he's a right winger, but you can find a way to talk about his, reactionary politics in a way that highlights leftism while not, throwing away Cormac McCarthy. Like, you can have both. Or like H.P. Lovecraft, who is one of my favorite writers. Complete, racist, super racist, even for the time.
Oh yeah.
Funny thing is, by the end of his life, he was actually a sort of socialist. He was a socialist by the end of his life.
Really, I didn't know
but
that.
For most of it, yeah.
Did he rename his cat?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he renamed Nigger Man, but it's funny. But you can look at the whole of Lovecraftian horror. Like, for some reason, like a lot of liberals try to dismiss him entirely and say, "Oh, all his horror is based on racism," which is bullshit. That's not. There's a reason why, like, there's tons of Lovecraftian writers who are not like 1940s racists, like there's something there that speaks to people and speaks to a lot of leftists too, because a lot of the Lovecraftian writers now are leftists, like Nick Mamatas or China Mielville, who, appreciate and study Lovecraft and have, written in his cosmic horror, written some of the same kind of things in cosmic horror. There's something about the idea that the fundamental, like, guiding principle of the universe is like horrific and insane, that speaks to a leftist perspective too. And when you look at so you can take these leftist messages from H.P. Lovecraft, even with his racism embedded in some of the stories, you don't have to throw away all of his writing. You don't have to say this means nothing when it means so much to so many people. All you do is, like, you lose those people when you should be saying, hey, H.P. Lovecraft fans, I'm a leftist. I know there's racism in there and makes you feel uncomfortable. That's okay. You can still love H.P. Lovecraft. And hey, why don't you take a look at what this story might mean in the real world perspective? Like, what if Cthulhu was capitalism? And what if I showed you that in his H.P. Lovecraft's actual writing, he kind of did believe that. He really did think that capitalism was like a really destructive force that organized the world. Now, his idea of undoing capitalism was to go back to like a feudal system where, he could be an aristocrat. But he did write specifically about how industrialization and all this stuff was like turning humanity into a bunch of like, workmen, and that's all they do with their lives, and like removing art and culture and science from people. Like, the world does not need, millions of people who can like, press a machine. Like, that's not what life should be about. He thought, okay, we need more, the nobility should be able to, go back to what they used to do and write, bad poetry all the time. But nevertheless, you could take that initial idea of his that like this is not a way to organize the world and put that towards leftist ends, and you can't do that if you just say Lovecraft is problematic and he's canceled. Like, you can't do that. You can't win over those people if that's all you have to offer.
Lovecraft is canceled. I love it. Yeah, for sure. I will say this: if you've been to a hot topic in the last 10 years, I don't know if Cthulhu is capitalism, but capitalism is Cthulhu. That motherfucker is on everything. I don't know where that market sprang up for, but baby, someone's buying that shit. Well, anyway, Leslie, thank you for joining us, and obviously come back anytime. We should totally do cross pods and all that stuff. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed Leslie's amazing brain and his ability to understand things like Cthulhu and relate them to capitalism, I would highly recommend checking out Struggle Session with our other pals. It's a great podcast, and you should probably plug that live show you guys are doing in LA one more time, because I believe we have some listeners out there.
Yes, November 19th in Los Angeles at Resident. It's only $10, only $10. Get you into the live show. We'll have exclusive merchandise, t-shirts, zines, buttons, all sorts of good stuff. The show will sell out. It will sell out. So get your tickets now at strugglesession.us or bit.ly/sesh LA. And I want to thank Jake for allowing me to come on his New York-based podcast to plug a Los Angeles live show, because I found out this is in the bylaws. In order to have a podcast in Los Angeles, you have to have a half-hour sitcom in development with Comedy Central. That's the only podcast that exists in Los Angeles, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we're all about breaking the rules, and overthrowing our overlords here at the glue factory I live in. All right, well, Leslie, have a good one. Yeah, enjoy your live show. Let me know how it goes. We're hoping to get into that sort of thing over here at PDA as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep. All right, that was my interview with Leslie Lee III from Struggle Session. Yeah, like I said, check out his podcast. Follow him on Twitter and check out all their stuff. Big fans of theirs. Also, speaking of live shows, if you're in Bushwick or Brooklyn or New York or the surrounding area, hell, someone came out from fucking New Jersey a while back, come to my live stand-up show. It's called Yoko. It's on the second Tuesday of every month at El Cortez in Bushwick. I host it with Ian Fidance and Claire O'Kane, and this week we've got Jabuki Young White, the newest correspondent from The Daily Show, and Daniel Simonson, Mary Beth Theron, Otto Fernandez, and more. It should be really fun. It's literally in a couple of days, so yeah, if you're in the hood, come hang out. We had a really great time last time, which was the first one, and hopefully we'll just be doing it every month into the future. Yeah, other than that, rate, review, subscribe, all that bullshit. Yeah, if you're a new listener, check out our Patreon for bonus episodes. We do a bonus episode every week. Things been going really well. Okay, I'm fucking exhausted. I'll see you later.